So I ordered this Anua Azelaic Acid serum on Amazon shop, which seemed legit, but now I noticed that the second ingredient is disodium azelate and not azelaic acid, as I've seen when I checked the ingredient list on YesStyle. Is this perhaps a fake product? A few weeks ago, a cosmetic chemist who also has his own cosmetic brand made a video on TikTok about his concerns regarding an azelaic acid serum from the brand Anua. Although before his video blew up, others had already raised questions and concerns regarding the same product. However, his video is the one that blew up. In this video, he also included other South Korean brands with their azelaic acid serums because they are all formulated in a very similar manner, and his concerns were not on the safety of those products but on the efficacy of those products, because based on the chemistry choices made by those brands, because of the formula made by those brands, he had his own concerns. So he made a video about it that reached many people, and as a consequence, many people reacted, including other cosmetic chemists, other brand owners, and even dermatologists. So many people have responded in their own way. It has opened a conversation on different topics around those type of azelaic acid serums. And among all of those topics, regarding the Anua Azelaic Acid serum, there are questions regarding the fact that there are currently two ingredient lists going around regarding the same azelaic acid serum. So although there are many topics to address, for this video I decided to only focus on the ingredient list, otherwise the video is going to be way too long. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. A few months ago on this channel, I published a video on azelaic acid, which is a complete guide. And in that video, I explained that I have been using and trying different azelaic acid products for more than 10 years now. If you don't know anything about azelaic acid, I recommend you to go check that previous video. But quickly, I'm just gonna mention that the ingredient azelaic acid has been used as a drug and prescribed as a drug by dermatologists since at least the 80s in order to help patients with acne, rosacea, redness rosacea, hyperpigmentation, and also melasma. On that previous video, I also explained that since, I would say, 2010, slowly but surely, cosmetic brands have also been using azelaic acid in their products. And one thing I also mentioned in the previous video is that the ingredient azelaic acid is not an easy ingredient to formulate because it comes in a powder and it has a very low solubility in water. But if you want to apply this powder on your face, you have to transform it, you have to incorporate it into a cream or serum or into any type of vehicle that you can apply to your skin. So in order to do that, they decided to use it in a form of suspension, that's how they call it, where they find a way to disperse bits of azelaic acid in a vehicle in a uniform way. That way you can use it on your skin. When it comes to texture, the result is a texture that is not going to be perfectly elegant. Sometimes the gel of a cream could feel gritty because you could feel some tiny bits of azelaic acid, or the formula could crystallize, or the texture could sometimes ball up. So there were some complaints about some patients regarding the formula. So although chemists were able to make a drug that worked, there are some complaints about the texture of the feeling, and that happens with many drugs. So chemists created a cream with azelaic acid, then a gel, and more recently, around the year 2015, a foam was also added in those drug products. And when you look into the development research of this foam, they explain that they use the same suspension method, but with what they call a micronized version of azelaic acid, meaning that the suspension was still there, but tinier in order to make a more elegant formula. My suspicions that I raised on the previous video was that many skincare brands use this micronized version of azelaic acid in order to make their products, because I found the texture to actually be quite okay. It's not perfectly elegant, but I didn't have any problem with what I've tried. I don't see that often the type of complaint regarding the greediness or the fact that the product could bulk up regarding the products which are sold now. So that's just my suspicion. But regardless of the fact that they are micronized or not, all the products which have been on the market until recently had this texture that was not a super elegant moisturizing texture as you would expect from a moisturizing serum or a moisturizing cream, for instance. Anyways, this explanation is important to understand what's going on. So, in order for me to make the best video possible regarding azelaic acid, before making the video, I wanted to try maybe 2 more azelaic acid products to review on my video. And I was looking at different products, including Anua, because it is so popular, you see it everywhere. But when I looked into it, when I looked at reviews, I was surprised to see the texture of the product and the way people were describing the product. There was a lot of emphasis on the fact that the texture was extremely elegant, the texture was moisturizing, the texture would spread easily, which is different from other azelaic acid products I've tried. And at the same time, they would insist on the fact that it contains 10% azelaic acid. If you've watched anyone which has been sponsored by Anua, they insist a lot on the fact that it contains 10% azelaic acid in it, like other azelaic acid products which are sold as cosmetic products. But at the same time, the texture is better than the other ones. I found it weird because I've tried many azelaic acid products. So my first suspicion when I saw the reviews and saw the texture of this product was that they did not use azelaic acid in it, but that they used a derivative of azelaic acid, which is used by some brands like the brand Geek & Gorgeous. The brand Geek & Gorgeous has a serum that they call APAD made with a derivative of azelaic acid. And I have tried this serum in the past, and I knew that the derivative of azelaic acid would make it possible to make a very elegant formula. So I checked the ingredient list on their website and I was surprised to see azelaic acid and not the derivative. So I wonder how come this is the only brand that I've known among dozens of brands who have been making azelaic acid products since 2010 that can make such an elegant formula. So I spent more time on their website thinking that maybe they have made a patent or something in order to make this formula possible, and there was nothing, no mention of any patent, no communication either about how they were able to make such formula. But because I did not have any answer and I found it weird, I decided to not buy it and not review this product. And I made the video that I made with products that I trusted and products that did not raise unanswered questions in me. But during that same time, I came across a video of cosmetic chemists who have a channel on YouTube. They also have their own brand, and they made a video where they reviewed different azelaic acid products, and Anua was one of them. When they reviewed the Anua Azelaic Acid serum, they were also surprised by the texture of the serum, and they looked into the ingredient list and they were able to explain why Anua was able to get such an elegant and liquidy texture. And that will actually explain the two different ingredient lists which are going around. But I'm gonna simplify the things for you. So when you look at the original version of Anua Azelaic Acid serum ingredient list, you see that azelaic acid is the second ingredient, and the fourth ingredient is sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is a base, meaning that its pH is very high. I think it's around 13, when azelaic acid, as any acid, has a pH that is low. It is around 3 to 4. What they explained is that when you mix a high amount of sodium hydroxide with azelaic acid, it creates a chemical reaction between those two ingredients that changes the composition of azelaic acid, which turns into an ionized version of azelaic acid that is a type of salt. The ingredient, disodium azelate, and you still have some azelaic acid left. And the disodium azelate, as I told you, it is a type of salt form of azelaic acid, can easily be solubilized in water as any salt. So when you turn azelaic acid into this new form, then you can create a liquidy, watery, elegant formula. But at the same time, that process decreases the amount of free azelaic acid in the formula. And this is not a special or new innovative technique. From what I've heard from different cosmetic chemists, at least on that part, they all agree that it is a very well-known and understood technique for cosmetic chemists. If you look at the ingredient list of this product on different websites worldwide, most of the time you would see the original formula of this product. But there are some websites where they use a different formula. For instance, in Boots UK, in Boots Ireland, I've noticed it in Beauté Privée in France, in Korean Skincare.fr in France, in Look Fantastic France. I've also seen it in a website from Finland. So on different European websites, you see that. Now, UK is not in the European Union, but when it comes to cosmetics, they follow pretty much the same rule. And I talk about rule or regulation because the ingredient list is not something that you can choose on your own as a brand. You have to list the ingredient list based on the regulation of the country where you are going to sell the product. On the Anua own website, you still have the original formula. But because we see different formulas in different countries, now it's pretty clear that it's not a mistake from one retailer. It seems to me that they are being given new formulas, and slowly but surely different retailers, different websites are being updated. And the reason I say that is because if the formula had changed, then the first place where we would see the change in the formula would be at least on the Anua website. But Anua keeps the original formula, and other websites, at least in Europe, are slowly, but it seems surely, updating their formula. And when you look at the new formula, it actually matches the reaction that cosmetic chemists are talking about. And in the new formula, you see as the main ingredient and the second ingredient, disodium azelate, and then further in the ingredient list as the seventh ingredient, azelaic acid. Based on this ingredient list, we know that the reaction between azelaic acid and sodium hydroxide in this formula created more disodium azelate than azelaic acid. To me, when I looked into it, I thought that makes sense that they are changing the formula. Maybe at some point the regulators in Europe noticed that the ingredient list did not represent what is in the bottle when we buy this product. But I have been told that actually what matters in the ingredient list is what you input in the bottle, not the result in the bottle. When you look at the European Union legislation regarding labeling of product, they explain clearly that on one side you have to put in the ingredient list what has been input in the product. So here sodium hydroxide and azelaic acid. But at the same time, they tell us what shall not be considered as an ingredient, and they are talking about components which are not found in the final product. So for this particular product, that creates an issue because on one side, sodium hydroxide was used in the manufacturing of this product. It was put in this product, but after the chemical reaction, in the final result, it had completely disappeared. And based on this labeling, if it has completely disappeared, it can't be an ingredient. With the original ingredient list, we have sodium hydroxide listed as the fourth ingredient, although when you buy the product, it is not present in the bottle. With that strict definition of the law, it is impossible to create an ingredient list that will respect those two elements of the law. Now, I am not a jurist, I am not a lawyer, but I know basic knowledge, and it is a fact that a law is very rarely black or white. There are very often legal room, and in order to know which way to go, you have to understand what is the purpose of the law and try to follow the purpose of this law. So here, when we look at the definition of labeling for the European Union, we can see that what matters to them is what was input in the product, because it makes sense. Usually, unless there is this type of chemical reaction, what you put in the product is what is left in the bottle. And at the same time, they tell us that what has disappeared from the product, what is not present in the product, should not be considered an ingredient. So it makes sense to me that the main purpose of the law is to describe in an accurate manner what is left in the product. And in this case, it is not sodium hydroxide who has disappeared, it is the sodium azelate and then what is left of azelaic acid. Chemical reactions in cosmetics happen, and the final result in the bottle is not always reflected in the ingredient list. So that part is not unusual. But here, there is not a small chemical reaction that slightly changed the equilibrium of ingredients. Based on the new ingredient list, sodium hydroxide has completely disappeared, and the amount of free azelaic acid, which is the star ingredient of this product, has decreased. That is a big change that is not represented at all in the original ingredient list. So that first ingredient list conflicts with the purpose of the European Union labeling regulation, which is why I highly suspect that regulatory or compliance considerations may be the reason for that change. So for the people who are online being concerned that they changed the formula, no, they did not. So if you are someone who bought the Anua Azelaic Acid serum with the original ingredient list and you loved it, it's not going to change if you buy the same product with this new ingredient list. Now, all of this, as I said at the beginning, raises many other questions, which I will address on another video. When I was looking into all of this, I came across a comment which mentioned something else that was weird about the ingredient list of this product. When you go on Anua website or on YesStyle, in the communication made by the brand, you can see that on top of azelaic acid used in this product, they also used what they call a trademarked soothing complex made with different natural ingredients, including aloe, different type of cica extract, but also ubiquinone and blue tansy oil. But when you look at the ingredient list, no matter which ingredient list we look at, those ingredients are not in the ingredient list. So I don't know what's going on about that, but I know that those two ingredients comes with different INCI name, but none of those different INCI name can be found in any of the formulas which are going around. So I don't know, I don't understand why they added that in their own communication. Regardless of the ingredient list, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are many more topics that could be discussed about all of this. But if I stick to the two ingredient list for this video, what I find disappointing is that the brand has not addressed any of that. They did not communicate in any ways why there are two different lists. You have people guessing online, some people who think that the product has been changed, some people who may fear that they bought a fake product. And the first comment I saw online from a person who was questioning the new ingredient list was from a year ago. So it's not like the brand did not have time to address the changes which are being done. In this video, I speculate because of everything that we know, but honestly, it makes sense unless the brand comes with a better explanation. I also noticed that in Australia, this serum is sold by a few retailers with the original ingredient list, but on Sephora Australia, they are selling this product with the new ingredient list. So it seems like it's not something that is going to be only specific to Europe. We'll see within the next few months if this ingredient list become predominant in Europe and Australia, but I tend to think that that is what is going to happen. I think 2 years ago, I made a kind of similar video with the brand Skin 1004, which used to sell their ampoule with a non-realistic ingredient list, which was only Centellia asiatica. They mentioned everywhere 100% Centellia asiatica extract. And on that video, I mentioned that probably in the future, they will have to respect better regulation of other countries, because this type of ingredient list for sure was not allowed, is not allowed in Europe. And now when you see this product on Anua's website or on European website, the ingredient list is different. They had to follow regulation and give an ingredient list that makes sense. Anyway, I hope this video was interesting. This is part 1. I will see you on part 2 of this topic. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.